Life as a parent is nonstop. I'm so focused on keeping my family healthy that I barely have time to take care of myself. If this sounds like you, then you need to give Symbiotica a try. Symbiotica is a health and wellness company that empowers individuals to take ownership of their health with high-quality formulas and supplements crafted to boost energy, immunity, gut health, and more. Symbiotica supplements are made with clean, natural ingredients, and they don't contain any toxins or artificial ingredients. Because they were designed for us, busy parents. They're quick and easy to take. Just a daily dose for your energy, immune system, and overall well-being. It's made staying consistent so much easier. And the best part? Symbiotica is having their holiday sale, so now's the perfect time to put your health in the driver's seat. Head to Symbiotica.com for 20% off with code GIFT20. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com with code GIFT20 for 20% off. Your health transformation journey starts now. Symbiotica Natural and Organic Supplements.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Jason with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I am Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. The man to my right is Scott Chasen of Fog.net, and Kansas beat Kansas State by 4. And K-State fans are counting that as a victory.
Oh, hold on, let me actually stop you there.
We're going to mark that up as a victory.
I need to stop you there and just quick technical foul just for you on that one. So take a point off.
I'm actually going to 3 victories in that.
Biggest victory was for the refs, who got to make themselves a big part of the game.
They were really involved.
And they had a great performance. Well, not by America's standards, but by the blowing the whistle standards.
Their ref buddies called them and said, "Good job going to the monitor that early."
That's what
good.
It was.
You can interact with us on social media at Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course answer our weekly poll question. And make your game predictions at thedriveshow.com. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at both GoPowerCat.com and Fog.net. And we start things off with our 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is sponsored by Houlihan's. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat. Devon Dotson carried the Jayhawks to a win over Kansas State with a 25-point showing on Saturday. Scott, what stood out about the point guard's game, other than the fact that he is really, really fast?
Yeah, he's really, really fast. I mean, end to end. Maybe De'Aaron Fox would be the only one I've covered, at least, that could match that speed in the open court. And there have been guys he's gone up against who have maybe had enough burst or the ability to contain him or keep him from getting to the rim like he did against Kansas State, but not many. I mean, that's really not that many matchups. Maybe you're talking about Baylor with that, but just Dotson's ability both in the full and half court to kind of weave around, fight through contact, and finish inside. And he's come a long way just in terms of finishing and picking his shots, not taking the wrong ones. Deciding basically, hey, when it's time for him to take over. Something he's exhibited this year that I think has really shown itself down the stretch is just this idea that when things aren't going right, he's going to be the guy to settle them. Whereas maybe early in the year when things weren't going right, he was as big a part of that as anyone else. So I think he's figured that out. He's learning how to lead a team. And I would just say this too, Devon Dotson only had 1 assist. Only had 1 assist in that game against Kansas State, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think when KU lets the other guys who are maybe better facilitators and passers, guys like Marcus Garrett, maybe even Christian Brown a little bit, when the Jayhawks put them into a position to facilitate and say, hey, Devon, you're going to focus on playing defense, and you are going to get to the rim and score and force help, basically get downhill, get past your guy, and get the K-State defense out of sorts. I think that's when Devon Dotson's at his best. So even though he only had 1 assist, I think he can still impact the game all over. I think it's just a different kind of point guard than maybe some of the guys KU has had.
Man, there was one play in the game, and my seat was just to the left of the basket, and he came right at me, and he got to the rim so quickly. It was absolutely awesome to watch. I mean, he was just just a bolt, and Kansas State couldn't really react to it.
Yeah, and I think the last 2 games maybe he had got a little tired. You had started to see him wear down a little bit, and Bill Self even said something. I think it was after they played Oklahoma State, where he was like, "Hey, you're seeing a tired guy out there. Clearly getting 4 days off or something brought that burst right back. He's young, so."
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not.
Well, Kansas State put up a tough fight but lost to Kansas. Fitz, what did the Wildcats do right and wrong on Saturday?
They played really good defense. And I say this also, I think they caught KU on a day when they weren't shooting the ball. The Jayhawks were not shooting the ball well, but Kansas State took advantage of that and really did play a pretty impressive game on the defensive end. They were incredibly disruptive, particularly in that first half. An incredible stat from the first half. Kansas State was trailing by 1 at halftime. They had 3 defensive rebounds in the entire first half. That means KU either made a shot or turned the ball over on every possession except for 3. And it was absolutely incredible to watch K-State defend in the first half. They kept themselves in it. But it gets back to the underlying issue with this team. It doesn't know how to score. And they had a lapse of about 7.5 minutes in the first half and 5.5 minutes in the second half. If you're taking 13 minutes off from scoring in a 40-minute game, you don't stand much chance. And they ended up, I think, 24 points in that second half. There's just no way to win a game. They just don't have enough offense. They don't have enough answers. They don't have enough players. They again played without Montavious Murphy, who is probably just shut down for the year now because they're worried about his knee. Why risk it at this point? So they really kind of went into this fray with 8 guys. They got into some foul trouble. They got tired. This was about as good an effort as I've seen from Kansas State, even though the offense was so pitiful. They seem to be more focused from beginning to end in this game than they have been a lot of times this year. And I joked at the top of the show about going to count that as a victory. Well, I thought it was a good sign. The last 2 games, it kind of looked like K-State had cashed it in for the season, and now all of a sudden maybe they're not quite done yet. They have a couple winnable games, but this season has been so dreadful. They're now 2-14 in the conference. Even if they win both of those games against Oklahoma State and Iowa State, they will still be last in the conference.
Yeah,
3 games in the South into this conference.
Talking about offense, which you mentioned, you even saw in that video 2 of those shots by Snead were, incredibly difficult mid-range shots, but credit to him, obviously, for making them. I just think, and you kind of highlighted this, when K-State is at its best, at least when it has been, and just, again, watching from my perspective, it seems like defensively, that's where it all gets started. Even when you have guys like, as recently as last year, Dean Wade, who could knock down shots from the outside and really power your team, it's still got to come from that defensive end.
They've got to play good defense to be in the game because even when they have good offensive players, they don't have a lot of offense. We'll get to that later in the show. But they have to have someone rise up and really get hot, and that person wasn't there in the second half, unfortunately. Texas defeated Texas Tech, and TCU upset Baylor. Scott, what did you make of the chaos in this Big 12 conference yesterday?
I think with Baylor, I think that was coming, but it was still surprising because Baylor had kind of skirted by, at least if you looked at some of their season numbers, with like a lower margin of victory in a lot of these games than you'd expect. And there were a lot of times games where, Texas, the one at Texas comes to mind, and Oklahoma State even, where they should have been up by more, they had the ability to put a game away, and just somehow they're not doing it, and they're letting this team hang around. West Virginia, by the way, was another example of that. When they beat West Virginia, but again, they let a 25-point game or whatever turn into a 15-point game, and now all of a sudden you're leaving with a not great taste out of your mouth. Now, TCU was up by a ton. Baylor obviously, had a late charge and nearly got right back in it at the end. But I think this tells you there are some Big 12 teams playing desperate, as Bill Self said after the game, because they believe that they can still make the NCAA tournament. I think that also tells you some of these teams at the bottom of the league, they're going to be harder to play in these final few games. I look at Kansas, Texas Tech maybe would be fired up anyway. They lost to Texas, as mentioned. But TCU is a game that comes to Lawrence this Wednesday for Senior Day, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But KU might not have Udoka Azubuike for that game. So the bottom teams of the Big 12 to me seem like they're really desperate and playing for a lot.
It's crazy. Texas wasn't even on the bubble a few weeks ago. They weren't anywhere near the NCAA tournament field, and all of a sudden, I think they're in right now. Oklahoma, goes and gets a big victory. West Virginia has just gone in the tank.
They've fallen off, and offensively, I mean, we always knew it was rough, but what it's become has been a real challenge for them to score.
Man, they're in the bottom half of the Big 12 right now. That is hard to believe with the way they started out.
Yeah, and Bob Huggins, to his credit, has obviously, I mean, he's accumulated a ton of wins. He might be the most winning coach in the conference just on career numbers, because he is ahead of Self, I believe. But I mean, even so, I'm not going to say a guy is over the hill, but offensively, that system needs an update. It's been that way since he had guys like Javon Carter and Staten, but eventually you don't have those dudes who are 4-year players who are great over a long stretch of time. You do have to update.
I'm familiar with not having dudes. I've been covering that. Yeah. Now a quick look at your poll question results. Poll questions are brought to you by Film at 11, your go fast, look good, play hard, custom shop.
Well, last week's question was, how many teams from the Big 12 will make the NCAA tournament? Simple enough. And we go to the results. 5 teams getting in 40%. That was the number one choice. 4 teams, 30%. 6 teams, which fits now looking a little possible. That got 20%, and any other number, 10%. That may be because people thought coronavirus might cancel the tournament.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could all be sick. That's nice. That's a good thought. This week's question is this. Kansas has a 1-game lead in the Big 12 with 2 games to play. Will the Jayhawks win the title outright? A vast array of answers for you. A, yes, B, no. I hope you can remember those. Vote at thedriveshow.com.
Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat. Udoka Azubuike appeared to roll his right ankle potentially twice in KU's win over K-State. Scott, what's the level of concern over that injury right now?
I think there is some level. The sky is not falling in Lawrence by any means. The latest update coming from Bill Self today on Sunday is that Udoka Azubuike is questionable for the game against TCU on Wednesday. So Self doesn't know whether or not he's going to play. He's in a walking boot right now, but I don't think that's necessarily cause for concern. Marcus Garrett, fun fact, has actually been wearing a walking boot since the Iowa State game in January. He wears it around campus. It's to protect his foot and an arch issue he's been having, but obviously he's played in every single game this year. So I think that doesn't necessarily by itself have to be cause for alarm. What maybe might be is the fact that overnight, I guess, Self said that it swelled up a little bit more. So now all of a sudden you have this injury where Azubuike goes down. It looks like twice he stepped on another player's foot. Nothing malicious or anything like that at all. Nothing, not a guy, shooting a jump shot and someone slides over him. That's obviously not Azubuike's game, but that happened twice, and he took another fall where he landed on his tailbone and his back, and so that probably doesn't feel good. But for Kansas, not having him there, it's kind of obvious what the drop-off is. You have a guy who could be the team's most valuable presence just in terms of what he brings to you when he's on the court and what you're missing when he's not on the court. And think about senior day, not having Doak. You're down to David McCormick before Silvio De Sousa's suspension is up. It'll be up for the Texas Tech game after that. So all of a sudden, KU becomes extremely thin in the front court. You've really got David McCormick and whatever you can get out of Doak. And even though Azubuike didn't have a huge game against Kansas State, Self said it was just important for him to play to eat up some of those minutes. They need him in the NCAA tournament. This is not a Final Four team without Udoka Azubuike. They won't be able to survive if they get into the wrong matchup. But if they can get him at 70, 80-ish% or something like that, very similar to the Final Four year 2 years ago, they definitely have the firepower to get that done. So we'll track it and we'll see what he's like. This is 1 day out from the injury, so you don't really know yet.
I was really surprised he came back and played. It looked really, really bad. It looked like he wouldn't. They kind of scraped him up and he limped off and he went to the locker room, and then Bill Self touched his ankle and Mr. Miyagi'd him and he came out and played.
Yeah, funny enough, Bill Self made a joke about it afterward. He said how he went down, you would have thought, amputee. And, sometime, Bill Self at times has made jokes about, hey, if Doak might be a little banged up, they don't even ask him about it because they know he's going to be like, Coach, I can't play and whatever. But Self did say he showed some toughness coming back in. Interesting, he actually worked out with the strength coach on the baseline sideline, like doing stretches right before he did. So at the very least, they felt like he was good to go from that.
He impacted the game, even though his stats weren't great.
Yeah. Well, Kansas State defensive coordinator Scotty Hazelton only stayed 1 year in Manhattan. Hazelton was hired Friday by Michigan State to be its new defensive coordinator. How did this go down, and what does this mean for K-State football?
A strange time for coaching movement, but this is all set up by the retirement at Michigan State and Mel Tucker from Colorado coming in at a weird time, and then he puts together his staff. And the last position he identified a need for was a new defensive coordinator. And Scotty Hazelton really caught people's attention with what he did this year with Kansas State and that defense, because Kansas State had the second best third down defense in the entire country and only gave up about 21 points a game in a league like the Big 12. So, I mean, he really caught people's attention. And Michigan State wanted him, and wanted him badly, because they basically doubled his salary from $550,000 to more than $1 million a year to be an assistant coach. And off to East Lansing he goes. He didn't want to leave. I had just spoken with him a couple weeks earlier, and he talked about how much he and his family loved Manhattan and they loved this coaching staff. But boy, when you get an opportunity like that, it's a really nice program. East Lansing's a wonderful college town. And there was a million reasons to take that job. So he departs, and what it means for Kansas State is now they have to continue to play the same type of defense they did under Hazelton, who really rebranded the culture on the defensive side of the ball and reinvented them from being a really passive, sit back and bend but don't break kind of defense to one that tended to attack more, at least posture more, confuse quarterbacks more. I expect them to hire from within. I don't know if that's safety coach Joe Clanderman, who came from North Dakota State, or cornerback coach Van Malone, who has defensive coordinator experience. I think they will probably promote from within and go hire a young linebackers coach to take the position coaching duties that Hazelton vacates. Surprising. This staff appeared to be sticking together after the 1 year together, and that's hard to do when you have that kind of success. People come in and try to poach you. But yeah, it worked out for the Hazelton family, and we wish him well, because Scotty was one heck of a guy and a really nice coach, really nice guy.
Kind of the opposite situation in Lawrence right now, with so many of the KU staff kind of turning over, keeping the offensive coordinator, although it is Les Miles' third offensive coordinator, still the same defensive coordinator, but a lot of those assistants.
Yep. A lot of movement in that profession. And now we step out of bounds.
Well, on Friday, it was announced that YouTube TV would no longer carry the Fox Sports regional networks due to a contract disagreement with new FSN owner Sinclair. And then on Saturday, a temporary agreement was reached, but Royals fans who subscribe to YouTube TV, Sling, and other services may eventually lose access to Fox Sports Kansas City, which carries the Royals. So Fitz, sort this out and what this all means.
I mean, this group, FSN, is the Yes Network out of New York and a bunch of Fox Sports regional. You've seen Southwest, Kansas City, Midwest. It goes all across the country. And Sinclair just bought this group of cable stations, and now they're in a really precarious position because they need to raise money. They need to get more fees paid to them so they can continue to get these contracts, because they have a lot of major league local coverage contracts like the Royals. And YouTube TV said, no, we're not going to pay what you're asking. And it looked like it was going to be over for the season. Now they've reached a temporary agreement. I expect them to pull the plug on that temporary agreement as soon as the season starts to really make it hurt for YouTube. But we'll see how it all plays out. Cord cutters beware. One of the reasons we chose YouTube was the sports package, but also the access to WIBW and local stations. And now, some of that has been taken away, but so be it. You just kind of have to find your plan. It is still available on Hulu and AT&T streaming plan, and that's really it. And if you're Sinclair, you got to be on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you want more money, but getting no money and not having viewers seems like the worst case scenario.
It definitely seems like the worst of the lesser, the worst of two evils. Is that worse?
I'm not sure, but it stinks. It stinks, and we'll see how it all plays out. But hopefully, I'll be able to watch my Royals. I need something.
Yeah.
Right now, basketball's been so bad. I'm looking forward to the Royals. That's it.
Well, hey, let's keep on that train of thought, and let's hear from the fans. Our fan question this week is, Fitz, was K-State even running an offense against KU? And that's from Thomas and Wamego.
One, I should say that KU's defense this year is absolutely masterful. This is a really, really good defensive team, particularly when they have Doak on the floor and he can guard the rim. They can really pressure out there in the wings and take things away. But for the most part, no, Kansas State was not running much of an offense at all. They stood around. Yes, they were tired. But really, this motion offense that Bruce Weber runs seems to be predicated on the fact that, hey, someone go make a play. And there was really nothing coming from the bench to organize a set or play very often that maybe got his team out of the ruts they kept getting into offensively. It'd be nice to have some things drawn up off the sideline to get a quick basket and get things kind of relaxed back there on the floor. But it was a point of frustration for a lot of K-State fans, Scott. They just really struggled to run offense.
And I think you put it perfectly. Kansas plays defense at a great level. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country, if not the best. But that doesn't mean the other team can't do things to score. Iowa State and Oklahoma both scored 70 on Kansas, so K-State can too.
K-State almost broke 60 points.
Almost.
Almost.
Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at TheDrive13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's Doctor Design program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show. Now it's time to take a look at your predictions, our predictions. The predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt, your work boot center. And remember to make your weekly predictions at thedriveshow.com. Let's look at last week's results. The viewers went 1-2, I went 1-2, and Scott went 2-1. And if you recall, we picked the outcome of the game. You got that right. We picked leading scorer would be
Devon Dotson.
Right, you said KU, I said K-State. And somehow I got the technical yes right because an absolutely ridiculous double technical call. We needed it though, so we got that down. Here's this week's picks. And we start with Oklahoma at TCU. We said it is a pick 'em. Make it nice and simple. Who's going to win? You say?
TCU.
I'll go with TCU. I like TCU.
Next, Iowa State at Kansas State. Fitz, who you got?
Pick 'em here too. I'm going to go with Iowa State.
I'll go with Kansas State and not feel great about it. I picked Kansas State like 6 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that's working out well for us. Our last game of the week is Kansas -1.5 at Texas Tech. Will KU win by 2 or more on the road?
I think dependent on the play of Azubuike, if he's good to go, I'll take a Texas Tech team with more to play for. Maybe Doak doesn't play.
I'll take KU just because it's weird that you took K-State and I took KU. Again, make your picks over thedriveshow.com. Now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is brought to you by Carpet One, buy local for a strong local community. And we start with Scott Chasen of Fog.net.
Well, the NFL Draft Combine, everyone knows about it. It's been going on, and Kansas had a couple of players receive invites, and one of those was Hakeem Adeniji, who, by all accounts, has really impressed at the event. You know, he kind of measured in, I guess you would call it, at 6'4.5", over 300 pounds. He was in the top 5 in terms of verticals. He had a 34-inch vertical. I'm not sure, for his position, that is. I'm not sure how much that helps you as an offensive lineman, but good for him to be able to do that. And then a 5'17", 40-yard dash, showing he's one of the most athletic, all-around linemen at the event. He played guard and tackle at KU. He could play all the positions. At least that's what the reports are out of that. So a very impressive slate from Hakeem Adeniji.
Kind of a disappointing crowd over in Manhattan on Saturday. 2 sections in the southeast corner were empty that belonged to the students. And normally I would chide the students, but you know what? I don't blame you. Let's just move on to another season and get K-State basketball, hit the reset. 3 games to go, 2 in the regular season, 1 in Kansas City. We'll see what happens. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you here next week and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.